What's up guys, it's Mantis here, and like many of you, I have been severely sidetracked with the release of Wasteland 3. It has been one of the best gaming experiences I've played in a long time, and I've really enjoyed it. Even though I've barely played Wasteland 2, I've never played Wasteland 1, I find myself enjoying Wasteland 3 just an astronomical amount. I find it to be a really good placeholder in my heart for the classic Fallout games. Is it exactly like the first two Fallout games, Fallout 1 and 2? No, it is not. It's not like them at all, but it's also really similar. It's hard to explain without playing it or without checking it out, so I highly encourage anybody who hasn't played it to check out Wasteland 3. It's been a blast. One thing that I didn't expect and definitely took me completely by surprise was the ample product placement that is in Wasteland 3. This isn't something that I'm complaining about, like, oh, they sold out and Wasteland 3 is filled with product placement. It was just odd to come across, and it's something I don't see a whole lot of people talking about. There's little conversations on the internet about it, but nothing substantial, and it's something I want to bring up because I find it very interesting. As we were going through it on stream, I brought this up a bit as well, but I wanted to dive into not only what this would probably mean, these items appearing in the game, but why are they here? You know, let's talk about this. First, I want to address some of the actual real-life products that I've found in Wasteland 3 so far. Hot Wheels car, Aquanet hairspray, a Snickers bar, Chips Ahoy, a Bic lighter. These things could be just random junk items. You could just find a candy bar or a box of cookies or a spent lighter, but they chose to have the brands be named there. Now this, of course, I'm not some like great expert in laws when it comes to, you know, copyright usage and things like that, but this is what I understand would be the case. They would either have to pay those companies to use their brand names inside the game, or the company in turn would have to pay them for them to use those brand names inside the game, and, you know, kind of giving them a boost of publicity, things like that. Now, of course, no money has to exchange hands, but deals would have to be made with each respective company. Stouffer's is another one that's in there. Now, notice how random these companies are. It's not just one company like, oh, Snickers sponsored the game, so every once in a while you find a Snickers bar. That's something that you see a lot in video games. Snickers especially has done that. But we're talking multiple companies just having little junk items that aren't even really mentioned, at least as far I've played almost 20 hours of the game, and no one's brought them up in game because they're just random junk items. It's just a box of cookies. It just happens to be Chips Ahoy. It's just a candy bar. It just happens to be a Snickers. Same with the lighter. Instead of finding a classic like Zippo style lighter, flip style lighter, we find a Bic lighter, which is very, very interesting because that's a copywritten design as well. Bic lighters. The reason you don't see any other lighters looking like Bics is because they have a copyright on that type of lighter, the way it looks. So this is very interesting to me, and again, I'm not a giant expert in how all these things work, so that's why I wanted to not only kind of look at it, but bring it up here on the channel, because I think it's interesting, I think it's cool, and it definitely took me off guard. One thing to note is not every item that you find is a product from real life. Now, if that was the case, you could just think, well, maybe the devs just maybe didn't patch it out, and they used that like, oh, this is a Bic lighter, this is Chips Ahoy, and they never really removed it. But I find that hard to believe because we're full release of the game and we have actual company logos in this with Snickers and Chips Ahoy especially. But there's also beers like Boers Light, Boers. There's little things like that where they invented their own products. Vlam is another one. Little canned meat instead of Spam, which it would have been very easy for them to just be like, this is Spam. Instead, they called it Vlam, probably because they didn't get an agreement with Spam. So it's interesting to me that not only the developers decided that was the way they wanted to go with it, but I really want to know how that all worked out. Like, I don't care if they're getting money for it. I don't care if they paid money for it, whatever. I want to know about the creative decision to do that, because it does add a bit of semblance of reality to it, where it's like, oh, I found a Snickers bar. But at the same time, having real products in games can be very off-putting. I cite one time I grabbed a bunch of mods for Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, where I replaced every single like fake brand in the game with a real counterpart. The pizza store became Pizza Hut. The little sodas and stuff, there was Coke and Pepsi and things like that, changed the gangs to real-life gang counterparts. And it was actually more off-putting than you would think it was, at least for me. Because when you go into like the Cracked In San Andreas and you see a Pizza Hut box and a bottle of Pepsi, you're like, ooh, not a good look. But, you know, it is what it is. Some people enjoy that type of realism. I'm one of them that enjoys the real products. Though with Grand Theft Auto, I would argue their made-up products are they're a part of their lore just as much as, like, say, Fallout's is. With Wasteland 3, I don't know if this happened in the other Wasteland games, if there was real products in them. So maybe somebody can tell me, but it's very interesting to find these so far. So to recap my knowledge of this, like I explained before, a deal would have to be made. Usually, they would pay the companies to use their brands, or vice versa, the brands would pay the game to put their brands in it. But seeing Stouffer's and Chips Ahoy and things like that, it's very, like, I doubt they reached out. I feel like the Wasteland development team reached out to these companies. It's also important to note that with, like, cigarettes and booze, I haven't seen any real world counterparts. There's a brand called Styx that somebody said, they're like, oh, I think that's a real brand, but I've never seen it. And none of the beer seems to be, or alcohol seems to be real life alcohol. And I thought that was interesting because I imagine that if something like a tobacco company or an alcohol company, just, you know, distribution company or something like that, were to get in on a video game, I feel like it would cause controversy because the fact that it's a video game, a lot of people relate those to children. So I don't see big tobacco coming in and being like, yes, put Marlboro and Camel cigarettes in this game, you know, like, because then it looks like they're trying to get advertisement towards kids. Even though this game is rated mature, that's how I've seen politicians take similar things before. And when I say nobody's talking about this, I truly mean that I can't find anybody talking about this. There's a small post on Reddit in the Xbox One Wasteland 3 situation on Reddit, and they're like, hey, there's Snickers in the game. And then other people are like, oh, I found this, oh, I found that. But they're not even mentioning most of the stuff that I'm talking about here as well. There's a lot of product placement in the game. And like I said, it comes off strange, it comes off weird, but it also comes off interesting and cool. And it's not something I look at as like an egregious monetization effort from the developers. It's just very strange to see. You don't typically see not only all of these types of brands put together, but something like, oh, they're just little junk items in the game you pick up. There's no announcement of them. There's no real advertisement of them other than the fact that, oh, it's on the ground, I picked it up. Oh, I have a Snickers now. I have a box of Chips Ahoy. Something along those lines. Comparing this to other games in similar genres, like Fallout, if you even look as far back as to the original Fallout or Fallout 2, even going into the Bethesda years, they have their own brands of things. Nuka-Cola, Vim, Fancy Lad snack cakes. The list goes on and on of the types of fictional food things, junk items, products. All those types of things are all fictional. They're made up for the world. And in turn, they add to the lore of the game world. And I think one thing that might hinder Wasteland 3 with that is when you use real life products like that, they're not really adding to the game world. Now maybe they can. Maybe there's a group of people that are obsessed with Snickers or something like that, and then that might look a little bit more like an egregious monetization effort. I'm not saying that exists. I haven't seen it yet. I doubt it exists. But what I'm saying is, like, these things can add to the lore because, like, I mean, it's just stuff on the ground. But when you have things like Nuka-Cola and Fallout, that's a staple of Fallout. And though there may be something like that in Wasteland 3, we see a lot of just real life counterparts of those things, which again is very strange to me. And I really want to have a conversation about this to anybody who wants to talk about how exactly this type of thing works. And I'll be reaching out to the developers as well, just kind of being like, hey, what's the deal with this? Just to see what the deal with this is, because it's very interesting to me. I don't know why it's so interesting to me, but finding a Snickers on the ground in Wasteland 3 is incredibly interesting to me. But finding Aquanet hairspray, a Bic lighter, Stouffer's, like frozen dinners, things like that, that's incredibly interesting to me. Super interesting. How did this get here? What is going on with that? Regardless of all these things, Wasteland 3, like I said, has been one of the best experiences I've had with a game in a long time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, it's like old Fallout, but it's not at the same time. Something you should definitely look into for yourself, because I do think that it's nowadays it's the closest thing to a modern, like, Fallout game, but from the past, like that we have. It's hard to explain unless you go check it out for yourself, go play it for yourself. I highly recommend it again. So get out there and explore Colorado. It's been fun, and I can't recommend the game enough. I really can't say how much I've enjoyed my time with this game. It's been phenomenal. But that indeed is going to wrap up this video, and I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it and you want to help the channel out, think about leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. I make content like this, usually cover the Fallout series, but I cover anything that I find interesting. So that's this channel for you. I want to thank my patrons and YouTube channel members, and a special thanks to my biggest supporters, Kim Jong-un, JP Rivera, Fireflare, Papa Swanson, Billy Joe Jim Bob, Bill Scott Sheets, Thomas, Laud Have Mussy, Edgy, and Primark Mustard. Thank you guys for your continued support. I will catch you on the next one. It has been Mantis.
I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon' touch the sky. You gon' touch the sky, baby girl. Testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die.